So we out here today, we throwing around a oldie but a goodie. We're throwing around the floating worm. And this is one of the first baits that I remember learning, like when I was like a teenager, young teenager. That it was something that a lot of the old timers around the house threw, and they caught a lot of fish, especially in April, May, anytime those bass or garden fry, when they first pull up to spawn. You know, whenever the fish pull up to get on to spawn or get on bed, there's always a little bit of a funk that happens, you know, immediately pre-spawn or post-spawn, whenever they're garden fry and all that type of stuff. It's just hard to get them to bite a lot of traditional baits. And this is just an absolute straight tail, 6-inch little skinny worm. I mean, it's just a meal that they're not going to see and pass up very often because it's, I mean, so like non-invasive. Whenever they're in that kind of negative mood, it's just a bait they're going to eat. And I like using the bright colors because it's more fun for me to see it. And I feel like if those bass can see it from a long way away, you know, it's going to give them a better option to come check it out. They get to it and they like the profile of it. I feel like I get more bites a lot of times on this worm being so bright because they can see it from a really long distance. It's just for me, as soon as that pollen starts falling, it's a bait that I always think about. It always comes to mind. I've caught so many fish on this bait out of pollen mats, or any time that I see pollen in the air, I just can't help but think about it. And over the past, I'd say probably 10 years, the wacky worm has really came on pretty strong and almost kind of put this bait out of business. A lot of people don't throw this bait anymore. They just kind of commit to the wacky rig. And I mean, that's a really good bait, but this bait right here, it's just been catching them forever. It catches big ones. Whenever those males are locked on, it's a bait that you can get out in front of and throw it around isolated cover and catch a lot of really big females. It doesn't look like a bait that catches really big females, but it dang sure does. And that's kind of what we're doing with it today. There's some small males up on the bank. We're out here on some of these isolated clumps of grass and stuff, and we're just kind of darting it through the holes, you know, letting it sink, letting it fall, twitching it a good bit. And one thing that's pretty important about this is you got to kind of mess with the way you rig it, but you really want this bait to almost walk the dog under the water. You really want to see it go from right to left, back and forth underneath the water, like I've got it going right there. You can really see it going left and right. And that's, to me, how I catch them the best, whenever I've got that bait going a little bit left, a little bit right. And I've caught them whenever I'm just twitching it straight back, my worm's crooked, all that type of stuff also. But I just try to make it where that bait's going left to right underneath the water. And like I said, I just put it in the holes around the cover, isolated stumps, all that type of stuff where I feel like those females may be hanging out right before the spawn. And then after the spawn, I throw it in the same kind of places where those large males, or big males, big females, everything, are guarding their fry. It's going to be on the isolated cover in the holes. Same kind of deal where they pre-spawn also. The reason this bait is so good in this exact application is we've got all kinds of grass right here. I can throw it all the way up on the very back far, so, you know, right beside the bank where they're spawning, and then work it through all the grass, slow it down and drop it in the holes, or I can work it really fast, almost like a topwater bait, over where it's a little bit thicker. Then whenever I get to a hole, I'll just drop it, twitch it slower, whatever I want to do. And one of the main reasons that I like to pick this bait over something like a wacky rig is because it is weedless. And the reason it's weedless is because it's on the absolute simplest rig ever. It's just on a 4/0 Gamakatsu hook, just a standard, rigging it like a Texas rig with no Texas rig weight. You just go in 1/4 of an inch on the head, come out, and then go in right there at the bottom of the egg sac and rig it relatively straight. I like a little bitty tiny hump in the back of it, but for the most part, I keep it pretty straight, and that makes it super weedless. And one of the biggest keys for me that I really like is when you've got that single hook with no weight, and it's a hook you got a ton of confidence in, you're not going to lose very many at all in this technique. Like, your land rate on this one's going to be like 98, 99%, because all you have is a hook whenever they eat that bait. So you're going to land a bunch of them, and you can throw it anywhere. Just got to stop sight fishing. That's a pretty one. Light line, light rod. Better get him. Look at that. A little old school floating worm. 3-pounder.